Welcome to Blind Man's Moon. Very excited for the opening video, not just because it's the maiden voyage of my channel, but because I've been wanting to cover this topic for a very long time. I'm sure you're just as eager as I am to take a look at these tips, so let's get started. Now, the reason I've chosen the Mass Driver for this video is because I honestly feel that it's the best weapon for a new player who's wanting to get out there and help his team out. It's a great support tool, it's very easy to get into, but in the same sense it does take quite a bit of skill to truly master, especially in game modes where friendly fire is turned on. Just so that I'm roughly on the same level as a new player, I'll be using the frontline starter fit and replace only the Mass Driver and equip the Nano Hive. This is because the Mass Driver only has 18 rounds, so it's important to keep stocked up to get the most out of it. The first thing you'll need to get a grasp on is its range capabilities, and this is made a bit easier to gauge with the rangefinder you can see in the center of the screen. Experienced FPS players will recognize this, and even more so if you have military experience. But what this allows us to do is gauge where the projectile will land given the range that the target is at. To demonstrate this, I've backed up to 40 meters. You can see this using the information readout in the lower right. Now that I've begun firing, you can see the rounds land at the bottom line on the rangefinder. Each line is an indicator in intervals, and in this close range we can see that those intervals are of 10 meters. Now let's move up to 30 meters, and we'll see that this holds true when we aim at the third line.
Objective A, null cannon targeting MVC.
Now we'll try 20 meters. The round should land where I've placed the second line on the rangefinder. I'm going to aim at this missile turret that seems to be about 70 or so meters away. As you can see, you have to aim just a little higher, but not too much. This is due to the arc of trajectory, or to be more specific, the summit of trajectory, where the projectile stops ascending and begins descending over the horizontal plane. It's important to get a feel where this is, as your angle of departure, the angle at which you will be firing, will affect where the projectile will land. This dissipates over longer distances, where it becomes less important to aim higher. The standard Mass Driver has a blast radius of 4 meters from its center, which means that the impact zone has a diameter of 8 meters. This is very forgiving, and while it's always important to try to get as close as you can, it's not so dire for someone who is still learning gun game. The Mass Driver operation skill increases its splash radius by 5% per level, so if you're wanting to specialize into this weapon, it's definitely a plus to have it. A good way to practice your shots is to place a Nano Hive some distance away from an immobile object like the supply depot. Given that the Nano Hive has an effective range of 4 meters, this means that as a new player, it's a good comparison point for the range of the weapon's splash. Now we can begin firing our practice rounds. Remember that at 40 meters you want to aim around this fourth line, and we can see that it's proving effective. Remember to stay mobile as you fire, as holding still allows your enemy to apply more damage to you. The sights are a good measurement tool as well, but there isn't much variation between it and hipshot reticle, as you can see. I've actually found it to be a hindrance because it slows movement speed, but you may prefer to use it. Another good way to gauge distance is to look at objectives. As you can see here, Objective Alpha is about 200 meters away. It's good practice to keep a mental check of this when approaching objectives that may have hostiles in the area. Here I'm going to demonstrate how the rounds can kill you, the user. The splash radius does take into account friendly fire on the user, even in game modes that don't have friendly fire activated. It's important to remember this, as firing too early when going around a corner, or hitting someone too close to you can cause some damage. The Mass Driver's projectiles do varying damage depending on distance from the center, with the lowest damage being at the farthest points from the center. This is useful for hitting targets that are behind cover, and can even lower their morale enough to force them out of cover and into the open, though this can be difficult to do when under fire. A good advantage to a new player that the Mass Driver offers is the splash damage. Even if you don't kill the target and have to retreat from taking too much fire, it's beneficial to soften them up for friendlies, as you can see from the kill assist I got points for. As you've probably gathered by now, the rounds do have some travel time, but this can sometimes be beneficial. Let's try that again, but this time we know what we're in for. As a new player, you shouldn't worry so much about making kills. More experienced players are better prepared to do this, and it's more frustrating than rewarding to die for taking too much risk. Note that entering and leaving cover, I am avoiding the enemy's rounds while putting my own downrange. As you'll see here, I use the cover provided to my advantage. staying out of danger but still applying enough damage to make kills. Elevation is a good advantage as it's easier to gauge where the round will land when you can observe the arc and epicenter. It can also reduce the necessary compensation needed to place a round on the target. This blaster installation was 40 meters away, but I didn't need to aim as high due to my angle of fire. I didn't kill this player, but his body serves as a nice example for shooting a target at 50 meters from a different angle. Here's another example from the same location.
MCC shield damage critical.
Here's a different location, but much to the same effect. Having a higher elevation than your target is important with the mass driver, as it's very difficult to kill someone above you when there's nothing for the round to hit that's near them. It's important to try to predict where your target is moving. If the target is moving to the left, try aiming to the right. Positive KDR, 9 assists. And I ranked 12th place, despite spending a large portion of the match screwing around.